There are some things worse, such as buying a lead to find out it's a professional litigator who wants to sue you. But all of those, all in addition to potential lawsuit, amount to spending money on marketing that isn't going to result in a customer.
So if you're talking about consent-based marketing, right, which means that somebody gave their approval to be contacted, hopefully explicitly for that offer or by that company, right? What's the other mode if it's not consent-based? Is that just, getting lists and dialing numbers and just spray and pray?
Yeah, absolutely, it could be. So we define consent-based marketing as the practice of only contacting consumers who have given their express written consent to be contacted about a product or service like yours. We think that leads to a better relationship with the consumer. If that's really the goal of marketing and sales, is to build a long-term relationship that's going to result in a high LTV, it's best to start that off by honoring the consumer's privacy and honoring their ability to choose, do I actually want to receive communication about a product or service like yours? The inverse of that, of course, could be any form of spam or just getting a list of consumers, a string of PII, and kind of smile and dial, hoping that you, as a numbers game, you come into contact with somebody who's interested in a service or product like yours.
What do you think is some of the barriers that keep companies from wanting to go all in on consent-based marketing, lead gen, purchasing, consent-based data, for example?
Yeah, that's a great question, and there are a lot of valid concerns. So I'll start with why, when done properly, consent-based marketing could be so advantageous, and then kind of back into some of the challenges. When thinking about only contacting consumers who've given their express written consent, it hopefully will lead to better relationships with your customers, but also lower acquisition cost. If you're focusing sales and marketing dollars on only paying for contact with consumers who said, yes, Jason, I want to receive contact about a product that you're selling, those should convert at a higher rate. It should also lead to happier call centers. If your agents are only having conversations with people that are actually interested in a service like yours, that's going to lead to happier call center reps and then better retention as a result. The challenge with consent-based marketing, when you're paying for a lead, so somebody who's, say, filled out a form on a website saying that I want to receive information about auto insurance, it's hard to know for certain, if you're not the one who's generated that lead, is this consumer actually interested in auto insurance, or did they fill out a form looking for a free iPad? Did they fill out this form for auto insurance 2 seconds ago or 2 months ago? Is this a professional litigator whose sole purpose and their day job is only filling out forms so that they'll get calls from call centers and then threaten a lawsuit under the TCPA? So there's a lot of challenges around, is this a legitimate lead? Am I going to be able to do so am I going to be able to contact this consumer without having to worry about getting sued? And if I do contact this consumer, is it somebody that's actually interested in my product or service, or did I just shell out anywhere from 20 cents all the way up to over $100, depending on what vertical or what industry you're buying leads in, only to find out that this person isn't really interested? So what we're seeing, the companies that are really succeeding here are the companies that are using real-time insights to be able to do things like verify intent, or verify, did this consumer actually give consent? To be able to verify, is this a real person and a legitimate lead? Is their contact information valid? So when you augment the lead with all of these different types of insights, that's when you know, and you could buy with confidence, that this lead is actually the consumer that you want to be getting in touch with. It's actually somebody who has high intention to buy a product like yours. And you can verify that it's not somebody who's currently a customer that's already working with you, because there's nothing worse than spending money on a lead only to find out they're a current customer. Actually, let me take that back. There are some things worse, such as buying a lead to find out it's a professional litigator who wants to sue you. But all of those, all in addition to potential lawsuit, amount to spending money on marketing that isn't going to result in a customer. So the short answer to your question, the companies that are really finding success are those companies that are using the newer technologies to make sure in real time they know, is this a lead that I want to actually purchase and has a legitimate chance of converting into a customer?
Yeah, I love that breakdown. And one part that stands out too is is it being filled out by a person, right? Not fraudulently or not a fake lead, with real information that can be, contacted, that can be used, and it's going to work. And it's interesting because over the last couple of years, I've had conversations with various service providers, your company being one of them, where I had not realized in the years past when I used to run sales teams internally, where the data that was being bought and the leads that were being purchased, if they weren't a warm transfer where Bob was on the phone and this was Bob, there was so many times where my sales team would call somebody and they wouldn't close the deal. And I would ask them, hey, what happened? Well, that was Bob Smith, but he said he never filled out a form and he wasn't interested in anything. And I think back to all the times where I literally thought and or told that rep that I just figured they were weak, or they came across as a telemarketer, and Bob Smith just put up those walls and didn't want another call from somebody. And it turns out, as I've dove into this, and the technology that's out there is showing that there's a big percentage of people who their information is being used to fill out forms, and it's not actually them. And I love some of the tools that you have with Active Prospect, which is the trusted form, which is recording, for anyone who's not interested or not familiar with it, is that it is recording what's going on when they're filling out that form. And it can detect if it's a real person or not, right? If it's a bot that's flying through it in ultra fast speed, that's not what a human would do. And I love, because now all of a sudden you can feel safe and secure, feeling like you can buy that more expensive consent data or leads, because there's also that fraud part that's removed, right? Is that what you're seeing a lot of?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, whether it's B2B sales or B2C sales, one of the most common complaints any sales manager is going to get from their team is that the leads are bad. For anyone who's ever watched Glengarry Glen Ross, the entire movie was based around these salespeople who were saying, if I could only get good leads, I could finally hit my number. So that is a legitimate complaint, and especially when you're buying third-party leads, meaning buying leads from marketing partners who generate them on sites that you do not own and operate, it is scary thinking, is this somebody who actually filled out a form saying, yes, I'm interested in home insurance or interested in home security? So part of what we do is, as you mentioned with our Trusted Form product, we're able to verify what happened on the form and when it happened. So we're able to remove that information asymmetry that takes place when you're buying a lead from a third party, and you want to be able to scale and acquire leads from third parties, so not just your owned and operated sites. But in doing that, you no longer have all of the information that you would have if somebody filled out a form on your own site. So some of those things that you don't know typically when you're buying a lead from a third party include, when was it filled out? What was advertised on the form? Was it filled out by an actual person or a bot? We're able to pull all of these different signals so that we can tell you when and where that lead was filled out, what was advertised on the form, and then by looking at things such as how long did they spend on the form, and were they clicking or tabbing between fields, etc. We could give you a pretty good indicator of if that lead was fraudulent or not. And when paired with a fraud detection service like a Forensic or an Anura, you could really have a high degree of confidence that you're only buying legitimate traffic.